It arrived without a return address. A single cream-colored envelope placed carefully on Jasmine Crockett's congressional desk. No seal, no emblem, just her name, hand-lettered in calligraphy. She opened it without blinking. Inside, "You are formally invited to participate in the International Forum for Ethical Governance, hosted in Tehran, Iran. A rare opportunity for dialogue in times of division." She read it once, then again. Tehran. Her staff nearly laughed. This must be a stunt. But the Department of State confirmed it. The invitation was real. The Iranian government had extended a direct invitation to a rising American voice known for her sharp truths and quiet storms. Most would have declined. But Jasmine? She said only 2 words. "I'm going." The day she boarded the plane, Washington was buzzing. Fox News called it reckless. MSNBC called it brave. Twitter didn't know whether to fear for her safety or cheer for the showdown. She didn't care about the noise. She packed no camera crew, just a small black folder, filled with handwritten notes and one photo, a little girl sitting in front of a bombed-out school in Syria. It wasn't the politics that pulled her there. It was the silence, because people love to speak about oppressed nations. But Jasmine believed in speaking to them. When her plane landed at Imam Khomeini International Airport, it wasn't just journalists waiting. It was state officials and cameras. Iranian state TV covered her arrival like a red carpet event. The captions read, "American Congresswoman visits for dialogue, not domination." She noticed the tone immediately. This wasn't hospitality. This was theater. She was being watched, closely. A black car escorted her through wide, near-empty highways. The sky was overcast, but the atmosphere was darker. She looked out the window and whispered to herself, "This isn't a conversation. This is a stage." And on that stage waited Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, the architect of silence, the master of symbols, and now, her host. That night, in her hotel room, she stood by the window and stared at the distant golden dome of a mosque lit against the night sky. Her phone vibrated. A secure message from an Iranian contact she didn't know she had. "They invited you for optics, but your words, they don't belong to them." She turned the phone face down and smiled, because she didn't come for optics either. She came with one question, and once it left her lips, nothing would be untouched. The cameras were already rolling. A sea of suits, headscarves, and security formed the perimeter of the hall. Polished marble floors, golden inlays, and a vaulted dome bathed in cold white light. This wasn't just a conference, it was a stage. And that's when the doors opened. Jasmine Crockett walked in. She didn't rush, didn't smile, wearing a tailored black coat dress, her hair pulled back neatly, makeup minimal, posture regal. Jasmine didn't command attention. She drew it in. The room shifted. Quietly, almost involuntarily. Members of the Iranian delegation stood politely, offering small nods, a gesture of diplomatic courtesy. But their eyes betrayed something else. Curiosity, suspicion, and something rare in a room built on dominance, discomfort. In the far distance, seated like a marble statue beneath ornate latticework, sat the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Surrounded by scholars, guards, and clerics, his face was unreadable, until he saw her. No nod, no gesture, just a fixed stare, heavy, slow, deliberate. His gaze wasn't a welcome, it was a warning. Jasmine moved through the aisle with composure, heading toward her assigned seat on the front panel. To her left, a French philosopher. To her right, a Chinese academic. Both glanced sideways, but neither spoke. Because everyone in that room knew the person who took the mic today wouldn't just speak, they'd tip a balance. Then came the announcement. "Please welcome His Excellency, the Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei." The room rose to its feet, except Jasmine. She remained seated, still, grounded, not in defiance but in principle. Khamenei walked slowly to the podium, his cane tapping rhythmically on the marble. His presence filled the hall like smoke, thick, quiet, oppressive. He paused before speaking, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed back on her. He said nothing, but in that moment the message was clear. You will not speak freely here. You will be used. Jasmine met his eyes, calm. She tilted her head ever so slightly, not as a bow, but a reply. Even when I'm silent, I speak. The leader would open the conference, but Jasmine's silence had already unsettled the room, and the real debate hadn't even begun. The forum began like every other political performance. Ceremonial introductions, staged applause, a series of curated voices, each more obedient than the last. The speakers spoke of stability, of sacred order, of moral duty. And yet, behind their eyes, Jasmine saw something else. Fear. It wasn't loud, it wasn't obvious, but it was everywhere. The first panelist, a cleric from Qom, recited lines from the Quran about divine hierarchy. The second, a minister from Syria, praised the forum for protecting Islamic integrity from Western poison. The third, a veiled university dean, made brief remarks, her hands trembling as she returned to her seat. Jasmine didn't speak. She didn't need to. She was watching everything. The eye contact avoided, the cue cards clutched too tightly, the sentences built like cages, where truth dared not peek through the bars. During the break, a translator approached her discreetly. Congresswoman Crockett, the next session is private, only senior members and approved media. Jasmine didn't blink. What happens when a guest isn't approved? The translator hesitated. Then, they usually leave. She nodded once, calmly. I usually don't. Backstage, as aides passed trays of tea and reporters whispered into devices, Jasmine slipped away from the main path and stood in the hallway just outside the press lounge. And that's when she saw her. A young Iranian woman, early 20s, when wearing a modest gray scarf, standing behind a security curtain. She didn't speak, she just stared at Jasmine and slowly raised 2 fingers. Peace? A greeting? Number 2 questions, 2 things she couldn't say. Jasmine met her eyes, and in that split second, she understood. These people aren't just censored. They've been taught to censor themselves. That night, back in her hotel room, Jasmine opened her black folder. Inside were the words she'd written before ever stepping foot in Iran. But now she tore them out. She didn't need a script. Not here. Because the real speech hadn't been made yet, and it wasn't hers alone. There was no music, no intro, just the cold sound of a microphone clicking on. Our next speaker, the moderator announced, comes from a country often in ideological conflict with ours. Yet she has chosen dialogue, and we honor that choice. Please welcome Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Scattered applause. But mostly silence, not out of disrespect, out of uncertainty. Jasmine walked to the podium. No notes, no teleprompter, just her voice. And the weight of everything she'd seen. She looked around the room. She didn't smile. You've spoken of order, of sacred duty, of structure, but I haven't heard a single voice from your people. Not one mother, not one teacher, not one grieving father. The room stiffened. You quote scripture, I quote faces, because I come from a place where policy is made and people still bleed. A few murmurs, a cough in the back. She continued, I sat through 4 speeches about the West's decay. But no one mentioned the teenage girl arrested for removing her headscarf, or the student whose body was returned to her family, with her voice box broken. Now the room wasn't just silent, it was locked. Breaths held, pens paused, even the moderator stared, unsure whether to stop her or watch. And then, a new voice took the air, gravelly, composed, unamplified but commanding. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had stood, without a cue, without permission. He walked slowly to the opposite podium, flanked by guards, his hands calm behind his back. Our dear guest, he began, has come here to judge, to hold our faith against her values. But let us ask, What authority does she have to define morality? Jasmine didn't flinch. He continued. In the name of freedom, her nation has bombed weddings. In the name of rights, her country funds oppression abroad. He turned toward her. You speak of girls and grief, yet your own cities burn in inequality. And then he smiled, slightly, a carefully calculated smile. Jasmine stepped forward, her voice low, controlled. You're right, my country is flawed, deeply. But here's the difference. I can say that. You can't. The room inhaled, one long collective breath, because in that moment, something shifted. She wasn't debating him. She was exposing the difference between power and permission. And though no one moved, the walls felt different. They didn't air her full speech on state TV, just carefully clipped moments, her opening sentence, the polite phrases, the part where Khamenei responded with religious scripture. The rest? Censored. But Iran is a land of workaround. Within hours, raw footage appeared on Telegram channels, signal groups, anonymous Twitter accounts with usernames like @Daughter of Shiraz and @Free Tehran Now. Clips of Jasmine's words were overlaid with Farsi subtitles, shaky but passionate. You quote scripture, I quote faces. I can say my country is flawed, you can't. They weren't just watching her, they were memorizing her. In a dorm room in Mashhad, a literature student wrote Jasmine's quote across her notebook and slid it into a locked drawer. In Isfahan, a barber whispered the words to a customer as the TV blasted government news. In Tehran, a woman passed by a wall at midnight and noticed a new spray-painted message. The regime noticed, quickly. On the second day of the forum, Jasmine received an official request to avoid discussing internal matters. Her team was given a new schedule, 2 panels canceled, 1 reassigned. The hotel staff grew colder. Wi-Fi was under maintenance. A surveillance van parked outside her window, unhidden, deliberate. Her translator disappeared, and the hallway outside her room suddenly echoed too much. That evening, she received a call from the U.S. Embassy. We've been advised it might be best to leave early. There are rising sensitivities. She didn't answer immediately. She stood by the window, watching the faint outline of the city lights below. Tell them, she finally said, I haven't finished listening. Because this wasn't just about what she had said. It was about what the people had finally heard. And once a truth takes root, even under concrete, it spreads. By day 3, the atmosphere had changed, not officially, not overtly. But Jasmine felt it in the air, the way doors took longer to open, the way guards didn't meet her eyes anymore, the way conversations trailed off when she entered a room. She wasn't just a guest now, she was a problem. The morning panel was postponed due to scheduling conflicts. The evening reception was restricted to heads of state only. Her name was slowly being removed from printed itineraries. Even the interpreter assigned to her that day, a nervous young man named Reza, barely spoke above a whisper. During a coffee break, he handed her a folded napkin and walked away. On it were 5 words, written hastily in Farsi and English. They won't let you speak. Later that night, a black car pulled up to her hotel, but it wasn't her driver. 2 men in plain suits stepped out and said the words carefully. We've been asked to escort you to a secure meeting regarding tomorrow's session. Jasmine smiled politely. Then, tomorrow, I'll walk. They didn't push it. They didn't need to. The message was clear. Leave quietly, or things stop being polite. Her phone rang. U.S. Embassy. We can get you on a flight tonight. Security risk is increasing. If you stay past tomorrow. Then I stay past tomorrow, she interrupted. There was a pause on the other end. You understand the implications? Perfectly. She didn't need protection. She needed to be present. Because leaving now meant leaving every girl who'd whispered her name through a locked dorm room door. That night, alone in her room, Jasmine wrote 1 sentence on the back of a receipt. They invited me to be quiet. So I'll speak even louder, through them. And then she did something they weren't ready for. She made a request, not to the organizers, not to the embassy, to the people who had started translating her words online. She posted one message to a private, encrypted network. I want to hear from Iranian women. Not officials, not spokesmen. Voices. Can it be arranged? One reply came back almost instantly. Yes, but not where cameras can find you. It happened just before midnight. No cameras, no podiums, no guards with stiff arms and emotionless faces. Just an old, unmarked office building in central Tehran. Lights dimmed, windows blacked out, one floor above a bookstore no longer in operation. Jasmine was led in through the back by a girl no older than 22, wearing jeans under her long coat and sneakers instead of heels. The room was silent when Jasmine entered, not from fear, but focus. There were 5 of them, 5 women. None introduced themselves by name, not because they didn't trust her, because names in Iran can be fatal. They sat in a circle, a worn carpet, a cold kettle of tea, a single laptop with a dimmed screen. No translators, no scripts, just broken English, burning eyes, and too many things unsaid for too long. One woman spoke first, her voice soft, her hijab loose, hands folded tightly in her lap. We don't need you to save us. We just need you to see us. Another added, they call you a foreigner. But you sound more like us than the men who rule us. Jasmine listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't respond with speeches or politics. She just heard them. They spoke of daughters beaten for dancing, of friends arrested for laughing too loudly, of schools turned into surveillance centers, of mothers who burned their own journals before raids. And finally, one of them said, we watch you in secret, not because you're famous, but because you say things we can't survive saying. When it was time to leave, Jasmine stood slowly. She reached into her bag and handed them her notes, the ones she'd written before she ever left Washington. These were written for a stage, she said, but I don't want them on that stage anymore. I want your words in their place. They didn't clap. They just nodded. And in that silence, something changed. She had walked in as a visitor. She was leaving as a vessel. That night, as Jasmine returned to her hotel under a gray sky and police lights in the distance, she whispered to herself, now I know what I'm really here to say. It was billed as a special session. No official title, no formal agenda, just a last-minute announcement on state television. A dialogue between the Supreme Leader and the American Congresswoman. But everyone knew the truth. This wasn't a dialogue. It was a showdown. 2 podiums, facing each other, a narrow aisle of silence between them. The broadcast went live across the region, satellite YouTube streams, even pirated channels in dorm rooms and hookah cafes. Inside Iran, people tuned in with the volume low and the doors locked. Outside Iran, people tuned in with popcorn and Twitter open. Khamenei spoke first, calm, authoritative, deadly precise. The West disguises decay with liberty. They send voices like yours to shame others while ignoring their own sins. He quoted the Quran. He cited history. He used the words divine and dangerous in the same sentence. He smiled without smiling. We are not perfect, but we are principled. Then he gestured gently to Jasmine's side of the stage. Would the Congresswoman like to respond? Jasmine stepped to the mic. She didn't look at the camera. She looked straight at him. I was raised to respect faith, but not when it's weaponized to silence girls, not when it's used to bury the dreams of women behind walls and laws and fear. The room froze. She continued. You say I'm here to shame. I'm not. I'm here to ask. Where is Nilufar Rahmani, the pilot who fled? Where is Sepideh Rashno, the artist you arrested for painting freedom? Where is Mahsa Amini, and why can't her mother speak her name aloud in this very city? No one moved. No one dared to. Khamenei's fingers tightened on the edge of his podium. But Jasmine pressed forward, her voice calm, steady, surgical. You quote religion, I quote the people, and they are not silent. You've just made silence their only defense. But tonight, they are watching, and they are hearing, not because I am here, but because they have always been here. For the first time all week, Khamenei said nothing. He blinked. Once. And the screen behind them, meant to show the forum's logo, flickered for half a second. And in that blink, someone had hacked the feed. 3 words appeared in Farsi. Jasmine, we hear you. She stepped away from the mic, not smiling, not triumphant, just still. Because the win wasn't hers. It never was. It belonged to the ones who had no mic, until she gave them hers. By sunrise, it was everywhere. The clip, the stare, the quote. You quote religion, I quote the people. It had been translated into 18 languages by noon, hashtagged into oblivion, memed on TikTok, printed onto t-shirts in Berlin by dinner time. In Istanbul, women gathered in coffee shops and whispered her name. In New York, protesters held up her face outside the Iranian mission. In Paris, someone spray-painted on the embassy wall. You silenced them. She didn't. Inside Iran, VPNs overloaded. The regime tried to bury the footage, but the footage buried them first. In Tehran student dorms, her speech was projected onto a blank bedsheet hung from a closet. In Qom, 2 teenage girls reenacted it on Instagram, their faces covered, their voices shaking. In a quiet village near Shiraz, an old woman lit a candle beside a photo of her daughter and played Jasmine's words on a cracked phone beneath her pillow. The Iranian government called the footage Western fabrication. State media claimed Jasmine's words were manipulated by foreign agents. Khamenei himself issued a veiled statement. False voices grow loud before they are crushed. But it was too late. The people had heard, and worse for the regime, they believed her. In Washington, Jasmine returned to headlines. But she didn't do interviews, didn't tweet, didn't bask in the spotlight. She simply posted one sentence. I said what I came to say. The rest belongs to them now. And in Tehran, a girl named Lila, the same one who flashed Jasmine the silent 2 fingers on day 3, sat at her desk that night and wrote something in her notebook for the first time in years. We're not invisible, we're just waiting to be seen. The world wasn't just watching Jasmine anymore, it was watching through her. There was no ceremony, no flags, no press, just a plane waiting on the tarmac. Jasmine Crockett boarded without fanfare, no security detail, no entourage, just her, a black folder, and the same quiet resolve she carried in. She had come to speak. Now she was leaving so others could. The departure was deliberate. The regime made sure of it. No public farewell, no mention on television. Her name already being erased from official transcripts. But it didn't matter, because something had shifted. Not in policy, not in law, but in people. And that cannot be redacted. In the skies over the Persian Gulf, Jasmine looked out the window. Below her, a land wrapped in history, pain, beauty, and unfinished sentences. In her lap was a single note, handwritten, folded twice. She had found it under her hotel door the night before, slipped through anonymously. No name. Just a short message in uneven English. You said what we scream in our heads. Now we scream it outside. Thank you for being our voice, even if we never know your full name. Back in Washington, they asked her for interviews. They asked what it was like to face Khamenei, what it felt like to be feared, what it felt like to go viral. She refused every request. Only once at a private event did she answer. A journalist asked, "Congresswoman, do you think anything really changed?" She paused, then replied, "I didn't come to change Iran. I came so Iran would know it's seen. And when people know they're seen, that changes everything." In Tehran, months later, no posters of her remained. But her name was still whispered. in corners, in courtyards, in notebooks passed between students. A single phrase scribbled in Farsi on a wall behind a shuttered school. Sister Jasmine didn't free us. She reminded us we already were. The broadcast was over, but the echo? It stayed. Forever. I didn't come here to fight your religion. I didn't come to insult your leaders. I came here because I was asked to speak. But I discovered I needed to listen first. I heard fear. I heard hope buried under silence. I heard the echo of voices taught to whisper their truths. And to those voices, I say this: you are not invisible. You are not alone. And no wall, no flag, no broadcast blackout can erase what has already been spoken. If truth is a threat to power, then maybe power should be afraid. I'm leaving tonight, but you're just getting started. Speak when it's safe, whisper when it's not, but never, ever stop.